Hello guys, and welcome here to another edition of Out of Turn 4. My name's Brian. Coming up on the show, we are going to recap NASCAR at Talladega. We're also going to discuss some racing news, big news out of NASCAR and IndyCar, and then of course we will make our picks for IndyCar and NASCAR. IndyCar at Dover and IndyCar at Barber, NASCAR at Dover. That would actually be fun to watch. IndyCar at Dover, I believe they would kill each other. But hey, just throwing that out there. Anyway, let's get into it. Let's start with the NASCAR Xfinity Series at Talladega. Noah Gragson goes on to win the race in triple overtime. Gets his second win of the season. And of course, quite a wreckfest at the end. It was actually pretty entertaining. But the big highlight, of course, Jeffrey Earnhardt driving that number 3 in honor of his grandfather, and of course for RCR, and with Larry Mack as his crew chief, and they both come home career best second place finish for Jeffrey Earnhardt. Great day for him. Of course, as you know, last year not a great year for Jeffrey Earnhardt driving for JD Motorsports. Missed a lot of races. I believe he got replaced later in the year. Really did not do well whatsoever. He had a lousy year. And of course, he's had kind of a rough start to 2022 so far. So to get that's a career-changing day right there, of course. So that poses the question, of course, should Jeffrey Earnhardt get a full-time gig in a top-tier ride, or should he or get more races? With RCR. I would lean toward more races with RCR. I think that's more legitimate, that's more viable. I would love to see him in a full-time ride, get to see what he could do with better equipment. If RCR did have an extra seat available and he had more funding, I would be down to see him drive full-time in 2023, battling for an Xfinity Series championship. However, that's a little difficult because, again, Jeffrey Earnhardt doesn't have much backing compared to other drivers. He's not really in the Chevy development program like Sheldon Creed is. He doesn't have the rep. I wouldn't say he doesn't have the skills. Austin Hill has the money. And, then Sheldon Creed just being a truck champion, being a part of the Driver's Edge development program, at least at last check. Again, I just don't know if there's a seat there for him full-time, but certainly on a part-time basis to see him drive the 3, maybe he gets 10, 15 races next year. I think he could really be competitive for RCR. And I would like to see that, honestly. I'd like to see what that team could do with him behind the wheel. I know Larry Mack running a full 15 races as the crew chief, not a legitimate thing to bank on, but at least Jeffrey Earnhardt could bank on that success. Of course, if you recall, he ran, I believe, 5 races with Joe Gibbs Racing a few years ago, and he finished top 10 in 3 of those races. So we know he's capable of putting up results in good rides. Is he capable of getting a win? That would have to be proven, of course. And I think he could do that in a top-tier ride. Speaking of guys that could win in a top-tier ride, I think we got to talk about this guy again. Let me stand up so you can see the shirt that came in. I'm not sure if I showed you guys that, of course. I ordered my shirt when he won at COTA. I might be ordering another one very soon. But Ross Chastain gets the win on a wild final lap at Talladega. Of course, it is his second career win, his second win this season. Didn't lead at all in the race, stayed patient on that bottom line. I know people don't like his style of racing, but you gotta admire the guy. He's a hell of a driver. He's earned his way up there, and of course, That race was just entertaining at the end. Austin Dillon shoved the 1. The 1 shoves the 5 out of the groove, and Kyle Larson essentially does the same thing to Kurt Busch that he did to Chase Elliott a few weeks prior at Auto Club. Sucks, unfortunately. But again, congrats to Ross Chastain. That is huge for this small team, of course, or this new team at Trackhouse. Their second win as a team. And boy, again, I think many people were wondering entering the season, will Ross Chastain be walking on eggshells again, seeing all these drivers in the development program for Chevy? I think he's silenced those critics. Again, 2 wins on the season, hard to accomplish. Does this mean I see him as a championship threat, or anybody for that matter, at Trackhouse Racing? I could see him making the round of 12, the round of 8. I won't shy away from saying that. He would be a round of 8 surprise, but I think the round of 12 is a viable option for the one team. Again, I just don't see them winning their way into the round of 8. I don't see them making the championship 4. I don't feel they're ready for that just yet. But certainly these wins prove a lot. It proves that the direction that Justin Marks has taken with this team is good. It's a good direction for them. And of course it proves that this buying out Chip Ganassi Racing was a good purchase for this team. And again, and what most importantly, what it proves is Ross Chastain is a wheelman. Ross Chastain, it proves everybody that said it a few years ago, proves them right. Again, a few years ago, everyone was saying, Ross Chastain, you give him the right ride, he's going to win races. And sure enough, he's doing just that now, behind the wheel of the number 1. The other big story, of course, I think I talked about it on this show, but Dale Jr. was in the booth for Talladega for Fox, of course, on loan from NBC Sports. Ultimately, the coverage that Fox put together was the best coverage I've seen them put together all year. And, you know, I was high on Tony Stewart early in the year. I was high on him to take the role full-time as the color commentator. Now I kind of hope that NBC loses their contracts, that way Fox scoops up Dale Earnhardt Jr. as the secondary commentator at the Cup level, next to Clint Boyer. So, again, I'm rooting for that more than anything else right now. You know, Fox's coverage may be bad. It hasn't been great this year. I'll give them that. I'll give everybody that for a benefit of the doubt. But, and here's the but, their coverage still beats NBC. I'm sorry, but 10 out of the 16 races are on the main network, which is great. There's no pressure to move it off the main network. Again, I know Fox, some stations don't have local news, but still, I think it goes better on Fox, because when they're on the main network, they treat it with the respect it deserves. You know, even if it overlaps all the comedy shows that are on at night, even if it overlaps it, they've been very accommodating to NASCAR over the years. And again, I've been a very vocal critic of NBC, and to be honest, this is the best broadcast Fox has put on in a few years. So kudos to Fox, and kudos to NBC for making that happen. Maybe we'll see some sort of agreement in the future, a gentleman's agreement in the future. We'll see. Of course, again, the rumors about ESPN are out there. I'm sure CBS will be a player, seeing how they've done with SRX there. So I wouldn't put that past them. Alright, on to the news for this week. 2 big stories, one out of IndyCar, one out of NASCAR. We'll start with the IndyCar side. Paretta Autosport has announced they will forego the Indy 500 and instead focus on running 3 road and street course races with Simona Di Silvestro in 2022. And this team will be fielded with an alliance from Ed Carpenter Racing. Their plan as of right now, they will run at Nashville, Road America, and Mid-Ohio that are on the schedule, with more being added potentially in the future. And then, of course, Beth Paretta has announced her plan to run that team full-time, potentially starting next year, maybe in the future. And, of course, I understand why they're not running the Indy 500. Of course, they don't want to run Ed Carpenter Racing thin in terms of supplies, because that team is running 3 cars at Indy. It would be a stretch on them, so I get that. Fair enough, you know. Then, you know, again, to see a female team being able to run, you know, I think that's great. And especially to see Simona Di Silvestro back in the sport is huge. But again, I like the Ed Carpenter Racing agreement. I like that they're going to run Nashville, Road America, Mid-Ohio. I kind of wish they would run Indy, you know, just for the sake of it. I wish Ed Carpenter Racing would find the equipment to help them run an Indy, because, of course, if you haven't been paying attention, Indy is really struggling to find that 33rd entry right now, and a potential 34th. So it's unfortunate that we're at this point. Of course, keep in mind, today is April 26th. I'm recording on the 24th. There's been no announcements as of when I'm recording as far as what a third entry or 33rd entry would be. And of course, you know, I'm just waiting to hear any news on that. I know June Colson-Hollinger has been listed as a potential 33rd entry. But again, stay tuned. Maybe we'll get an announcement soon. Otherwise, it sounds like the Indy 500 is just going to have 32 entries this year, which would be such a shame seeing the growth that we have at 27 full-time drivers. You know, but again, I understand why Paretta's not running it. It's a shame they aren't, because I feel like they could be a player with Ed Carpenter Racing. Of course, we've seen Ed Carpenter Racing have good qualifying speed. I think Paretta would make the field if there is the potential for a bump. If they ran the Indy 500. I also believe that Paretta could be a top 10 contender, maybe even a top 15, with Simona Di Silvestro behind the wheel. But I certainly hope they will consider full-time as early as next year. Going forward, moving on to the big NASCAR news, Kyle Busch this week, of course, was in the media center, and we all know how Kyle Busch is. And there were some interesting comments. Of course, people questioning his contract status for 2023. Of course, no deal has been put forth. We know M&M's is leaving the sport after this season. So Kyle Busch, of course, answered in Kyle Busch typical fashion that if Joe Gibbs doesn't want him, goodbye. And then, of course, someone asked him about a potential future. He said, ask Joe Gibbs. And, of course, added to that, the Truck Series is full of people with money. So, of course, his comments, for a guy trying to get a contract extension, it did not sit well with the Toyota executives. So that leads to question, you know, where could Kyle Busch end up in 2023? That's a really tough call. Again, Kyle Busch is approaching 40, if he's not 40 already. In this day and age in NASCAR, that's considered old. There's no shying away from that. That is considered old. And looking at his performance the last few years, since his championship, it's not been the best. So again, there's a few factors there. On top of it, he doesn't have great sponsorship relationships, of course. You know, his personality, some sponsors might not find attractive for an offer. So it would just be a shame to have Kyle Busch go out this way. But even worse, someone said something about retirement, and that really aggravated Kyle Busch, and I don't blame him for being aggravated with that. I would like to see Kyle return to the car. I'd hate to see him go out like that, even though I've been a vocal critic of Kyle Busch. But again, I just think with his age, there's just no way there's a top ride out there for him. I feel like Ross Chastain has secured his ride at Trackhouse next year. If there was any doubts whatsoever, I think he silenced those doubts at COTA and now at Talladega. Looking around, I mean, Stewart Haas is going to have at least one vacancy with Eric Almirola retiring, but I just don't see that happening. I'm sorry, I just don't see Kyle Busch going to Stewart Haas Racing unless somehow Kevin Harvick retires, because of course we know Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, they don't play nice. So we know that for a fact. So again, I just see a part-time opportunity being available to him in 2023. I think that's the safest route, assuming Kyle Busch does not return to Joe Gibbs Racing. Now, who would the top candidates be if Kyle Busch leaves? Look no further than Ty Gibbs, and unfortunately that's another reason why I hope Kyle Busch comes back, because Ty Gibbs, he's won races, he's earned at least to be in the discussion. He hasn't earned, to me, a cup ride yet. He hasn't earned even a chance to run on a part-time basis. I just don't think he's ready for the Cup Series. I really don't believe he's ready, but unfortunately I believe he's the only guy under consideration. Brandon Jones, if Brandon Jones was Cup ready, he'd be at the Cup level. I'm just saying. For anybody that likes Brandon Jones, again, if he was Cup ready, he'd be at the Cup level. Harsh but true. Again, just don't see much happening in the way of that. I imagine that Kyle Busch will be back, but if not, it will be Ty Gibbs. That's my prediction. Let's get on to the picks for this weekend in racing. I'll start with the IndyCar at Barber Motorsports Park. My pick is Alex Palou to win that race. I believe Alex Palou won there last year. I think this is where Ganassi gets things going, especially with how hot Team Penske has been this season. NASCAR Xfinity Series at Dover, I'm going to pick Justin Allgaier. I believe now, Junior Motorsports can get on a run here. Again, Hendrick backed Chevys have always been strong at Dover, so don't put it past them that they could be the ones going to victory lane. As far as the Cup Series at Dover, I'm picking the hack. I had to say that. Alex Bowman, he's my pick to win the Cup race this weekend. I believe he won there last year. I can see him pulling off another win, that number 48, which is known to run very well up at the front of the pack. So those are my picks. I want to thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like, be sure to leave your thoughts below. Of course, tune in to No Final Bell tomorrow around 5 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. And of course, otherwise, we will see you next Tuesday when we return with another edition of Out of Turn 4. Until then, goodbye everyone.